والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So we're going to look at the next chapter, or I should say the next section of this particular portion of As-Salah, and this is going to be the last section in the chapter, and this has to do with mentioning a couple of voluntary prayers. So the voluntary prayers, which we'll call an-nawafil or a nafila. So you have some vocabulary now. The nafila is a voluntary prayer, or nawafil for the voluntary prayers, the plural. There's three different types. There's sunan, there's mustahabbat, and there's tatawu'at. So the sunan, and he talks about what that means here. The sunan, what's meant by a sunnah prayer is what has been reported from the Prophet ﷺ's regular practice, that he would perform these prayers on a regular basis. And basically you have three things besides the obligatory prayers, and he mentions here rawatib, which are just after the fara'id. Rawatib are the highly stressed prayers, and I'll mention those in detail, typically occurring after the obligatory prayers. Witr, as we know, is prayed in the night, and al-duha, which is prayed in the early morning, mid-morning hours. So this category here, the ratiba, is highly stressed, and its time is fixed with the obligatory prayers. And in accordance with Ibn Qudama and his school of law, there are 10 raka'at that are prayed throughout the day that are associated with the obligatory prayers. There is 2 before Salatul Dhuhr and 2 after Salatul Dhuhr. And that gives us, you have to keep count because I'll lose, 4. Then there is 2 after Salat al-Maghrib, 2 after Salat al-Isha, and 2 between the Adhan of Fajr and the prayer. 10. So that's our 10. So it's 5 prayers that are considered Sunnah Ratiba. And those are number 1. And so a good practice is, or let's say the beginner level practice, where you're beginning to really embark upon a life of prayer and worship, is you make those a priority. After, of course, the obligatory prayers. Yes? We'll get there. Okay. We'll get there. 10. 2 before and 2 after Dhuhr. 2 before and 2 after Dhuhr. 2 after Maghrib, 2 after Isha, 2 before Fajr. That gives you 10 raka'at. 5. This is Madhab Ibn Qudama. Yeah, if we start going all the madhab, we're going to stay here all day long. We will be lost. And then we'll be drowning in the pages of fuqaha. These are called Sunnah Ratiba. After that you have, as he mentions, al-witr. The witr prayer is prayed after Salat al-Isha and before Salat al-Fajr. And it is at minimum 1 rak'ah. The least complete is 3. That's aqallul kamal, right? The least to have a complete witr is 3. And at most, it's 11 for witr. So witr and what we're doing, tarawih, those are different things. Okay. And then there's Salatul Dhuha. Salatul Dhuha occurs after the sun has risen above the horizon to the height of a spear, which is typically 15 minutes after sunrise. So the Shuruq al-Shams, 15 minutes after that, is around the time for Ad-Duha. And you can pray Ad-Duha all the way until Salatul Dhuhr. And that is prayed in an even number, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12. And can be done to make up for a missed witr. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have done in the rare occasion that he missed the night prayer. He would use al-duha as a makeup. And the duha prayer should be done every other day, unless you're in a special time or a special place. For example, Ramadan, or if you're visiting Mecca, etc. Then you take advantage of those special times and places to do it regularly. And the reason that it's considered to be done every other day is because of the way it was reported. Some of the companions reported that he prayed it. Some of the companions reported that he didn't pray it, which means that he must not have prayed it all of the time. So every other day is a good habit. And of course, we're relying upon our madhab here of Ibn Qudama and his fellow companions. Then lastly, okay, so that's the three. You have ratiba, witr, and duha. So here you have the sunan. These are things that you should be regularly performing. The next one is al-mustahabba, which is something that is preferred and voluntary. And this is that which is been reported by way of its virtue or reward. But the Prophet ﷺ himself was not regular in its performance, like praying when you go into the house, or praying before you leave the house, in the dukhuli wal khuruj, right? So this is something that there has been mentioned a reward for it, but the Prophet ﷺ himself did not regularly do it. So those things, they can be done because they are virtuous acts of worship, and there is a reward for them. Yes?
Do you mean a house of worship or your own house, or both?
Into your own house. Yes. And then coming into the masjid, that's a different thing, because you're coming into the house of Allah and there's a salat, there's a tahiyatul masjid, which is greeting the masjid, and that's something that should be done on a regular basis, unless of course it's during the time of prohibition, and he's going to talk about that shortly. So then after that you have at-tatawwu'at, which are the optional voluntary prayers, and this is everything else that has not been mentioned with some sort of textual evidence. But the servant, he volunteers to do such prayers, such extra prayers. So these are the three categories of nawafil, called nawafil because an-nafal means excess or abundance or extra. And so what you're trying to do, the objective is to pray beyond the obligatory prayers. And the benefit of this, of course, is mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith Qudsi, that my servant, there's nothing more beloved to me that my servant draws near to me with than the obligatory deeds. So the obligatory prayers is how you get close to Allah to gain His pleasure. And he says, and he will continue to worship me with an-nawafil, the extra deeds, until hatta uhibba, until I love him. So those of you that are striving to gain the love of Allah, you have to step up the worship. You have to increase the devotion, because the devotion, remember, is motivated by your love for Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reciprocate that love that you show to him, and it will be, of course, beyond anything that you could ever offer to him. Allah is not in need of our love, but he still reciprocates that love out of his mercy for the faithful. So these are the three categories that you want to be thinking about: the sunnah prayer, the mustahab, and the tatawwu'at, voluntary prayers. And you want to focus in that order, okay?